So now that we know how to make AJAX request and know how to get the response, it's time to get data from a server using AJAX and see how we can access the data and manipulate data using AJAX. First of all, we need to use a service, and as I told you, the service that I'm going to be using is called JSON placeholder, which is the service. And this service, as I told you earlier, it provides a lot of data and a lot of different forms of data where you can test your AJAX functions. So I'm gonna get here a URL for getting posts from this service. So if you click here on this posts, it's gonna display a typical JSON response. This JSON response is basically an array. Let me zoom in. It's basically an array of objects. So it's an array that has objects. As you can see, each object represents a post. Each object represents a post. So we can make a request to this URL and then get posts from this service. So here we need to create a new URL. I'm going to say here var, and then I'm going to say posts URL. And then it's going to be equal to this JSON placeholder.tpcode.com, but it must be inside quotes. And also the URL, the complete URL is /posts. So here it must be https://JSON placeholder.tpcode.com/posts. So this is the URL for getting posts if you want to get posts. So what I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna, instead of passing the URL like this, I'm gonna be passing this posts URL. Instead of hard coding the URL, I'm gonna pass this posts URL in the open. So this open is gonna take get and then comma and then posts URL, which is the URL that is gonna make that's gonna return these posts. It's gonna return these posts upon success. And here in AJAX response, we should here get the response in case of success. Let me first save and refresh. Now let me refresh and make sure that it's working. As you can see, it says we have the data. But where is the data? The question now is, where is the data? How can we access the data, this data, from the server, from this service? Well, the data here is stored in the, as I told you, the HTTP request is the object that has everything. It has the status, it has the code, it has the data, it has the response, everything related to either the response or the request. So the HTTP request has the response, has the data. So in order to access the data, we say HTTP request and then dot response text. This response text is going to have all of the data. It's going to have all of the data that we are going to get from the server. All of the data that is going to be returned is going to be stored in the response text. So I'm going to store that in the console. I'm going to display that in the console.log. So I'm going to say console.log and then HTTP request.response text. So here, let me add a comment. Data is stored in the response text of the HTTP request object. This is very, very important. You need to know that whenever you want the data, it's in the response text. This response text. Let me now save and refresh my website, my URL, which is index.html. Let me refresh, and here it says we have the data. So where is the data? The data is in the console. Let me open up the console. Right click and then inspect, and then head on over to the console. Click on console. Now guess what? The console has the data. As you can see, the console, let me zoom in. The console now displays the data in it. As you can see, this is the data. This is the data that we got from the server, which is this data. So this data that was in the server, we got this data, and now we have the data. We have the data in the console. So this is how you can access the data from an API service using AJAX.